Nice one. And a nice big smile there, Peter. Thank you. Had your teeth done? Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Bingley Camera Club. Nice big turnout again, and welcome to those that are new here, some for the first time. So we're going to get through club notes very quickly because I know you're eager for the presentation tonight. First of all, the running competition next week is the deadline for the entries. It's mobile, am I right? Yep, mobile is the category, so get your entries to Chris. Follow the instructions on the website for WeTransfer, that sort of thing if you're not sure. If not, just ask in the social media. We've got the 9x9 coming up soon. There's an email gone out tonight to the speakers for that. So if you haven't had an email, speak to Marcus. Also, on the subject of emails, Nick sends out regular emails. If you're still not getting any emails from Nick at all, just have a word with him and double check got the correct email address. And finally, we've got a new sign-in sheet at the back there, which you haven't had this season so far. So if you haven't ticked it on your way in today, can you do it at the break or on your way out, or preferably the break, so we can take it away then. And that's it. So over to tonight. We've got Ian Beesley here tonight, local legends. So promised to be a good, interesting presentation tonight. Are you mic'd up with first mic? You are? Yes. So we're going to... yeah. Also, can you at home make sure you're muted, please? We had a bit of feedback in here last week, and you can't tell the dog to do that. It's rude. So, yeah, if you don't make sure you're muted at home, please. Everyone, let's have a look. We can see you. That's it. So we'll just get in mic'd up with the final mic, and then we'll be ready to go.
I'm awfully quiet. Thanks. I'm ready. Do you want to take to the screen now so I can see? Well, God, it's a bit loud, isn't it? Is it meant to be this loud? Oh, okay. Right. So anyway, thank you for inviting me to Bingley Camera Club. It's a few years since I've been here. And so what we're going to talk about is life. Very deep meaning. Not really. So I don't know if any of you went to the exhibition at Saltsville. Life, the retrospective. Thank you very much, the man at the back. Which did actually have 38,000 visitors in 10 weeks, making it possibly the most popular photographic exhibition in Britain for a number of decades, though, as a rather eminent London-based photo critic was at pains to point out to me, was that the quantity of visitors was no indication of quality of work. He's a bit of a pillock, really. So he's not on my Christmas card list. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, what happened was I've done a lot of work with salts over the years. I photographed it when it was a working mill. I photographed it when it went into closure. I photographed it when it was derelict. I photographed it when Jonathan Silver took it over. And I've worked closely with the Silver family for, 3-4 decades? And I did a couple of exhibitions there. And then, because I am getting into my autumn of my years, the Silver family asked me if I'd like to do a retrospective, which we were going to do. Now, I don't know about your lives, but my life now goes into two sort of periods. These pre-lockdown and these post-lockdown, or pre-epidemic, post. And the retrospective was supposed to be before, we had all that, terrible times. So it got cancelled, or it got shelved. And then when everything sorted out, Saltsville had, like a lot of places, had gone through a very difficult period, financially. So they said, we need to put an exhibition on, Ian, but all our exhibitions have gone anyway, and we haven't actually got a lot of money. What can you do? And they said, you can have the roof space, which, have you been in the roof space? It's the longest room in Europe. It's over 200 metres long, which means the last time Usain Bolt was there, it took him the best part of 20 seconds to run from one end to the other. So the click, is it one? That one goes back. So this is the exhibition, and taking it into the roof space is problematic because it is such a big space. And of course, one of the things is people go there to look at the space as well as look at the exhibition. So you think, how do you put an exhibition in here that makes any sort of sense? You don't want it to look absolutely bare, but you don't want to clutter it up. And also, you've got to be aware that people look at exhibitions, unless it's actually completely and utterly regimented, they wander about and things. So it's quite interesting. So we thought, well, how on earth can we do it? And a friend of mine who's a curator of an art gallery in Manchester, he said to me, Ian, he said, what you need to do is just work in the space. He said, work in the space. So what I did was I emptied my studio entirely. I emptied the spare bedroom. There was stuff that Angela, my partner, didn't even know got stored under the beds and in the loft and everything, and in her dad's garage. So we took absolutely everything there about a month before it was due to open. And we started to look at how we could put this together. And it was one of the things, we didn't have enough money to frame it all, but I was against that because I've been to see a lot of retrospectives, and Jesus Christ, are they boring? I mean, really, I don't know about you, but I got really fed up of looking at, black frame, beautiful black ebony frame, window mounted, in a sequence with some really erudite words written on it about how marvellous it all is. And I just think that doesn't reflect my career. It's not like that, it's not organised. It's chaos. And one of the things was during lockdown, I don't know about you, but I watched a lot of television. Oh, you didn't watch any television then? Oh, what were we all doing? And I got really interested in crime dramas like Vera, Endeavour, Morse, and all that. And the thing that I really started to thought, I love it when they get their maps and they put the piece of string out of the, well, he could be a rugged or this guy was seen here. And I thought, what a wonderful vehicle for exhibiting stuff. And of course, a lot of people always ask me where I took this picture. Where's the geography of it as well? I've been doing it for nearly 50 years. So some of the pictures I took in Bradford in the series, you know what I mean? I can't remember where they are. States have gone, things have got changed. So what I did was, this is one of the bits I did. I got this massive map, and I stuck the pictures on them. The ones I identified, I ran the piece the straighter, but we asked people in the early couple of weeks if they could identify these places, would they actually let me know? And it was really good because this one here, this one of them here, I had it off, I know it were off Thornton Road, but I didn't know where. And this woman got in contact with me and she said, it's Bilston Place and these are all my friends, right? And she said, I'll put you in touch with them. So she put me in touch with there's a little boy at the front and there's a boy at the back. And the boy in the back rang us up and he said, yeah. But he said, I don't remember you taking that picture. But the lady in the curlers on the corner said, ask me more. And she used to tell us that one summer, this strange man came round taking photographs. So she said, I'm not having it. So she said, I hit him with yard brush. Now, she didn't hit me with yard brush. And he said, I always wondered why she had a framed copy of this picture in the living room after she hit me with yard brush. And he said, he made a good story. And then there's another, he kept me back. I said, up at the top here, there's 3 boys who were building a bonfire. There's 2 Asian lads on the right, and there's another lad. And they're sat on the ubiquitous car seats reading comics. And the lad on the left got in contact with me, and he said, my dad sent me a copy of this picture. And he said, can I have a high-res copy? Because I want to print it out. And I said, yeah, let me have that. Why is that? And he said, well, I'm now the CEO of a company in Munich, and I want it for the boardroom so people can see where I came from. Because I told them the stories about living in inner city Bradford, and they don't believe me. So that works really well. And then we made a couple of constructions. We decided that the stuff I did on mining, we'd have it below your eye level. So you look down onto it, so you're looking down into the ground. But it was made so it was self-contained, really. So you could wander from one section to another section. And this is, I think I had 49 frames available. So we put that as, this is a wall of work. So it represented 49 years of my working career and these 49 separate trades and industries represented there, many of which, no longer exist. So as I say, we're really successful. And we did try to get a book deal. So we approached all sorts of book publishers and they were all, no, it's a bit niche, blah, sort of crap like that. And then once it'd been in the national newspapers and it was on BBC Breakfast and all these other programmes, they all started ringing me up then and said, we'd love to publish a book, And I must admit, this was so hard work to put in. And I thought, I can't be bothered. Anyway, this guy came to see me and he said, I really want to do it. And he showed me some of the books. And I didn't really like them. I said, no, I'm not that bothered. He said, it's going to be a big book, 200 pages, hardback and all that. So I said, well, it's a lot of work, And I said, I'll only do it if I can have the designer that I want. I want a book designer. Andy Edwards, who's one of the best book designers in Britain. Thinking that'll call his bluff, he'll say no. And he said yes. So I thought, I've got to do it now. And it was really difficult because one of the other things that I noticed that people were taking time to read the handwritten notes and things like that. And you're thinking, how do you put that into some sort of coherent form? Because an exhibition is completely different from a book. And a book is completely different again if you're going to do it properly, because if you just do it like it's on the wall, virtually all you're producing is a catalogue. And the other thing is, I think it's the way people read books. They read them in a different way. So you've got to be able to form a narrative, and it's also got to have an emotional pitch, the book. So as you're going through it, it's not all flat, or you don't start with a big bang and go down. It's a lot of work to sort it out. And I thought, it's such an immense thing. How do I do this? And I personally, I can't do it on the screen because you're looking at double-page spreads. You're looking at how everything connects. So Andy Edwards suggested, he said, what you need to do is you need to get sheets of A2 and lay them out on the floor. And that's a double-page spread. And then put the pictures on it, move them around, get your sequence and do that. So that's what I did. And I started in November. 1st of November, I started. And I finished that at the end of April. So it took ages. But I can't claim that, I did it on my own. I had an assistant who was very interested in editing of photographs he didn't like, mainly by eating them. So this is how it works out. This is a double-page spread. So I'd write the notes, put the sequence together, photograph it, do all the high-res scans of all the prints, send it through to Andy, and then he would fill it about, and then it would, eventually came something like this. So that's what we did. We produced that. And the first edition is sold out, really. I've got 6 copies left, if anybody's interested. Well, yeah, it's sold out. So the second edition will come out in April next year, which will coincide with a new exhibition that I'm putting in Salts Mill, which will open at the end of April. This exhibition was called Life. The next exhibition is called Life Goes On. So there is a book. And it's been quite well, as people have bought it by the shed load. Now, the other thing I decided to do after that is I have donated my entire archive, negatives, notebooks, absolutely everything, to Bradford City Art Galleries and Museums, to their photographic archive. So people in the locality will still have access to all this work. And that'll all start to go online later this year. So the question is, how did my career start? Well, I didn't do that well at school. And in fact, well, I don't know if you read the Guardian actually printed an article saying I was expelled, which is a slight exaggeration. I was advised by the headmaster to find employment suitable to a boy of my meagre talents. And this was after I put potassium permanganate in the swimming trunks of the head boy at the swimming garden at Windsor Baths, just before the final. So he dived in, and for those who don't know what potassium permanganate is, it's a very vivid, bright purple crystal used in the dyeing industry. So he dived in, and it turned the bath purple. The only thing I didn't realise, it turned all his genitals bright purple, and all his legs. Now, needless to say, he was very upset. His mother was bereft because she thought he would render him sterile for the rest of his life. And of course, the headmaster, having to abandon the swimming gala, wasn't that impressed. So I had to leave. And the first job I got was in the mill, Associated Weavers. And this is a picture of me on the right when I was working there. And I was the third man on a Voltex loom. So I don't know if anybody knows what a Voltex loom is. It's a massive loom where you put raw wool in at one end, it combs it, carves it, spins it, and then weaves it, and it comes out the other end. And they're longer than this room, and they're immense. Really noisy, incredibly hot. And it was in the early 70s, so you actually had to keep the machine running 24/7. And you had to clean them while they were still running, which you wouldn't be allowed to do now. And the thing that always worried me working there was when you went to the canteen, there were people with hands like this. We were working there one day, we're cleaning the machine, and Sid Waddington is cleaning, and there's a sudden, very strange ping sound. And he lifts his hand up, and his index finger of his left hand has been chopped off. Right, so what you were having to do in emergency, first thing I did was to ring the dinner ladies. And the dinner ladies are coming up with bags of frozen peas. The rapid stump in that, he's carried off to the BRI. The rest of us have to try and find his finger to put in a bag of frozen peas so he can have it sewn back on. So we're running around trying to find this finger, only to find that the mill cat had got it. So he never got his finger back, and I left the week after. I thought, I'll not stay in there. So then I went down to the Labour Exchange, and they said, we've got a job for you at Percy Longman's Nonsuris Foundry, as working in the foundry. So I went to work there. And I really liked it there. It was only a small foundry, but I got sacked after I didn't get sacked. The guy said, I was such a weakling. I was only about 8.5 stone. So when we were pouring hot metal, after about 3 hours, I was shaking like and he said, it's no good. We'll kill you. So I had to leave. So I went back to the labour exchange and they said, well, we've got 2 jobs we can offer you. One is as an apprentice grave digger at Undercliff Cemetery, or the other job you can have is as a labourer at Eschel Sewage Works. Now, when you're 18, I think there's a young lad here that's 18 or younger, that's a very, very interesting life choice. So I thought about it and I thought, I'll go be a grave digger, right? Now then, I went up to Undercliff Cemetery for the interview. Now, at this point in my life, I was a very fine figure of fashion, right? I'd watched Woodstock and I've decided that the way forward is to be a hippie, right? So I've got the full Monty and all things like that. The only problem is, as you will know, the Bradford climate is not like California. So I did actually end up ditching the beads and stuff, but it kept long hair. But anyway, I went dressed similar like that to an interview at Undercliff Cemetery where I met this man, who I did photograph nearly 20 years after that event. And he looked me up and down and he said, well, we dig 6 graves a day here. Looking at the state of you, I'll be digging 7. Sod off. End of interview. So then I end up going down to Eschel Sewage Works. Now, I suppose some of the people in this room will know Eschel Sewage Works, which is 5 miles down the valley here. And, when I went there, it was all still steam driven. Now, Eschel Sewage Works was built on Lord Stansfield's estate. It's over 2,000 acres. The river goes through it, the canal goes through it. There's an 18th century country house in the middle of it. There's 4 farms, there's forestry plantations, absolutely enormous estate. And that was because Lord Stansfield, in around 1900, complained vociferously to Bradford Council that they were just dumping sewage straight in the river there. We now pay Yorkshire Water to do that, so nothing's changed. And Bradford, being a hotbed of socialism, did the only thing that was politically correct and a compulsory purchase all his land and his house and his assets. And they built this sewage work. That's, it says, I think it was 2,000 acres. I mean, absolutely enormous. 26 miles of railway track and its own acid plant. It had all sorts of industrial processes. Now, if you've never been, this is the hall in the middle. This is Eschel Hall. And when I went there, this is where all the staff were, all the, the management, but all the labs were in there. And to the right of it, you might just be able to see a sort of conservatory. Behind them woods there was a massive walled garden, 18th century walled garden. I think it was just short of 2 acres, where they grew all the flowers, all the veg and everything for Bradford Council's civic dues and things like that. And I started work there in the garden. It had a peach house, it had a vinery, grew oranges, absolutely fantastic. And the first thing that Yorkshire Water did was when it was privatised, they took it over. They bulldozed the gardens and built the executive car park. We should have known then what a set of bastards they were. Anyway, so I started work there, and I'd been there about 4 weeks. And because I was so skinny, I got transferred to the boiler cleaning unit. So I spent about a good month cleaning out Lancashire boilers. And then they realised, because I had such an affinity with salt and steam, I got transferred to the railway gang. And this is the engineer I used to work on. This is Elizabeth, which is now in Leeds Industrial Museum, which does make me feel old. And this is Eric Denning, the engine driver. And I was the road runner. And the road runner is the assistant engine driver. So what I used to have to do is I used to have to jump off the engine and hook and unhook the wagons. You don't fire up the boiler, you do the cleaning, stuff like that. And I worked there for over a year. And it was there, and I all the men that I worked with, the people with it, I owe a massive debt. because after being there a month or two, they really started to get on to me by saying, "You're an idiot, you can't stay here. You're a clever lad. You need to leave. You need to get yourself an apprenticeship, or you need to get yourself an education. Go to college, go to university." And a lot of these men, they'd fought in the Second World War, they'd come back, they didn't have access to further and higher education. So they got trapped in a cycle of unskilled labour. And they knew the value of education was to break that. So they really encouraged me to find something that I wanted to do. And when I was there, I bought my first camera. And I started photographing here because people won't believe me when I told them the stories about this place. Because, it's steam engines, everything was steam driven, all the characters that I had. And we got a portfolio together. I went to Bradford Art College. Then I went to Bournemouth and Pearl College of Art. Then I got awarded a Kodak Scholarship for Social Documentation. And then about 10 years ago, I got the Honorary Fellowship of the Royal Photographic Society. And then just before lockdown, I was awarded an honorary doctorate from the University of Bradford. So it's panned out quite nicely. So I worked there. Now, this man, Reg Smith, he was the foreman of the railway gang. Now, in many ways, a very kind and intelligent man, but also a very cruel and intolerant man. Now, he had three passions in life: Eschol Sewage Works, Bradford City, the Mighty Bantams, and then capital and corporal punishment. He'd made a personal study of this, so for any crime, any misdemeanour, he knew the correct punishment, which was often incredibly painful, and very, very unpleasant. And when you're working on the sewage works, certainly in November and December, you'll do anything to be sent out of the cabin. And at that time, there was a debate going on, this is the early 70s, about whether hanging should be reintroduced. And in the paper I was reading, the Home Secretary said, would never bring back hanging because there isn't a man or a woman in the country would be prepared to take on such an awful job. And I read this out to Reg Smith, and he said, I'm not having it. I'm not having that. We're going to go right away to the Home Secretary. So he drags me down to Westall Hall, and we go into the Secretary's pool, and he dictates to this young girl, dear Home Secretary, I, Reginald Smith, 62, formed the railway gang at Eschol Sewage Works. I've read recently of the fact you would find difficulty in finding somebody to take the position of a hangman. I'd like to be put on record that I would be more than happy, if not enthusiastic, to undertake such task. Yours sincerely, Reg Smith. So he wanders off then, and then this girl says, what should we do with it? I said, well, I think we just better post it. So we post it off. 3 weeks later, he gets a phone call. Mr. Smith, there's a very important letter for you. It looks like it's from the Houses of Parliament. So he goes down and he gets this letter, and it says, dear Mr. Smith, thank you so much for your enthusiastic letter. Please be assured that if the position ever comes vacant, your name is at the top of our list. Well, he took this as gospel, so he used to carry it around in his wallet. Any argument about who done what to whom, whatever. See that there? Any minute now, I'll have a phone call from Strangeways. I'll be over there. I'll sort them out. And when I left to go to college, he got me a present. He said, oh, yeah, Ian, I've got you a present. Good one, all that. So going down on the train, I opened it up, and it's a book. And it's the autobiography of Albert Pierpoint. For those of you who don't know who Albert Pierpoint was, he was the last hangman who was actually from Bradford. So anyway, I read this book, and in fairness, it's a very, very interesting book. And of course, it's quite interesting that how he changed his opinion on what he did for all his life. Now, when I got to the last chapter, I noticed it had been cut out. I thought, what's all that about? So I went to the library and I got a copy. And in the last chapter, he said that he didn't think capital punishment served what's good to society because it wasn't a deterrent. he'd hung too many innocent people, he'd hung too many people that got learning difficulties, etc., etc. So I went back, I said to Reg, what happened to that last chapter? He said, oh, you don't want to read that because he went soft in the head at the end. So anyway, when Reg came to retire, he asked me if I'd take a photograph. Now, this is one of his prized possessions. The little boy in the middle is Reg, when he was 14, when he started work at Eshill Sewage Works. And the man to the right was his dad, who was the foreman of the sewage works. So when he was in retirement there, I recreated that as well as I could, because by this time I've got a 5x4 plate. And so these are the railway gangs stood very proudly on Elizabeth. Now then, when you went to a sewage works, one of the things you got a dog tag, right? And this dog tag was made, I think it was stainless steel, something like that. And it was basically, it had your name, it had a contact number on it, and it had your blood group. So if you fell into an acid tank, what was left of you that could identify your body, or if you were taken really ill and to the hospital, the chest take you for Bowles disease and all sorts of things like that. So anyway, after a bit, the foreman, the works manager said, Ian, do you want to be in the lottery? He said, we have a lottery here because on the sewage works, there's some very, very unpleasant jobs, but there's one or two really, really good jobs, and we do it by lottery. And he said, when we sign the siren, everybody goes to the workyard and you throw your dog tag in, and if it's pulled out, you get the job. So I said, right, okay, I've got a good idea of the unpleasant jobs, but what is the really, really good job? And he said, the best job, it's once a year in August when it's Wakes Week and all the mills are on holiday. And he said, the flow of sewage slows down. So we direct the sewage from what they call settling. The settling tanks were probably as big as this room, but a bit longer. They're as deep as this, but they're probably half again long. And there were two of them. And that's where all the sewage came in through what they call the tunnel wells. And there, all the liquid would be drained off, and then the sludge. But all the heavy stuff drops to the bottom. So once a year, a gang of 6 men had to go down into there and shovel everything out. Right. I think, well, that doesn't sound like much bloody fun. He said, no. He said, the thing is, you keep everything you find. So I said, oh, yeah. And he said, yeah, gold rings, watches, coins, earrings, necklaces. And he said it's thousands of pounds. And they used to do that. And then what they used to do is they would display stuff that was really unique in Eshill. And anybody who'd lost it could make a claim for it, got it back. But anyway, it's worth a lot of money. And I thought, yeah, I'm having that. I'm really up for that. So I said, I'm in the lottery. About a week later, the siren goes. We all go up and stand around and put all his dog twigs in the bucket. And he says, right, this is not good. There's no sewage coming down the tunnel mouth. A man has to go up the tunnel mouth and find out what the blockage is. Now, the tunnel mouth is probably, it's about as wide as this white bit here, and there's eyes as the screen. And everything comes down. There's no coming down it. So this guy gets it, gets the full vulcanized waders on. He goes up the tunnel, he comes back and he's like throwing up. So he wants the man. He said, it's a dead cow. There's a dead cow and it's blown up like a barrage balloon because it's full of gas. So the foreman says, right, a man has to go up the tunnel and burst the cow. So he dispatches somebody to the joiner's shop to get a broom handle with a sharp chisel on. And anyway, I was feeling really sick at this point. I'm thinking, oh my God, I think I'll just faint and I won't have to do it. Anyway, they pull the dog tag out, and the person who pulls it out is this man here. This is little Harry Hargreaves. He's the smallest man on the site, right? And he's sort of turning white. And he says, well, I can't swim. Oh, so what's the least of your problems? So he gets all the full vulcanized waders on, he gets the big gloves like that. Then they put a full harness on him, and at the back there's a ring. through the ring, we put a rope, and the rope is then fed out by 6 men. So he's told, Harry, when you shout, bursting the cow, we'll pull you back. And he's thinking, it's not a good plan, this. So anyway, Harry goes off up this tunnel, and then you hear in this little quavering voice, I'm bursting the cow. And there's this awful sound of wind and rushing air and sewage, and 6 men pull Harry back 200 metres under foaming sewage. Needless to say, he survived. But when they closed the sewage works, he was found crying in the canteen. And somebody said, what's the matter? And he said, I'm really frightened of leaving because I starved to death. And Harry had learning difficulties. He couldn't read. And he never cooked in his life. So for 40 years, the camp ladies had made him meals that he could take home on the weekend to warm up. So he was worried that he wouldn't have that anymore. But thankfully, somebody bought me a microwave and taught him how to cook. One of the things I was really interested in was the portrayal of industry, because when I looked at the photographs that were being exhibited and shown at that time, none of them really reflected my experience as an industrial worker. They were either overlit, overstayed, very sort of antiseptic. So I was really interested in trying to photograph it, how I felt about it. So I started to just use, I used available light, and I used a thing called high-speed recording film, which is what was made for the police for night surveillance. You could rate it at 6, 7, 8, 9,000 ASA, and then you'd have to develop it for like 40 minutes. So it would record something very, very grainy. Now, the thing is, when you went to the sewage works, it comes as a surprise to you. You really stank. Your clothes absolutely stank. My mother wouldn't let me in the house. I had to get undressed in the garage and then have a shower. And she refused point blank to wash the overalls and clothes. So this man, he was called Jock the Wash. And for 50p, he would take your overalls and your work clothes and he'd put them in an oil drum with boiling water that was heated by steam, and with an old scaffolding pole, he'd stir it round while he would pour in like a bottle of Domestos. So they didn't actually smell much better, your clothes, but they did look clean. Now, the worst place to work on the sewage works, it was called the press house. Because National Sewage Works, it was the only profit-making sewage works in the world, because it was based on the extraction of lanolin, wool grease, because all the scouring mills just used to flush it down the sewers. And the guy who built the sewage works worked out that if you could extract it, it's worth a lot of money. So after they'd actually gone through the settling tanks, what was laughingly called the sludge was then boiled in great big vats with sulfuric acid. Then it was pumped into what they call the press house, where there were these big steam-heated hydraulic presses where it would press the sewage for 48 hours and the wool grease would run out the side. And then after that, what was then known as the cake was dropped into railway tunnels underneath, which I used to have to go underneath and put the wagons up, and that would be made into fertiliser. So, it's ahead of its time. But the press house was hot, filthy, really unpleasant, and they were the highest paid men, but they were all short of labour. So any misdemeanour, you would be sent to do a week in the press house. You would get, a week, a fortnight, depending on what you'd done. Strangely enough, for some reason, I did a couple of stints. And the first time I went, I met these 3 men here, which is really sort of interesting, because the man on the left, every last Friday in the month, he would clock off at about 2 o'clock. He'd go to the showers. He would then emerge in full evening dress. A taxi would come and off he'd go. And it fascinated me. And I said, what's he doing? I said, well, we don't know. We never asked him. So next time he did it, I said, I'm just intrigued. What are you doing? And he said, well, I go to the opera. He said, I go to the opera in Leeds. He said, I save up my wages so I can afford it. And at that time, you had to wear evening dress. And he said, I go to the opera. And he was an expert on Wagner. Really interesting. The man on the right used to give talks to the WI on Delftware, because he had the most fantastic collection of 18th century Delftware. So he's quite interested in it. And that. Now, the man in the middle is just how you see him. His nickname was Compo. And when I started there, he said, oh, we're going to have a fantastic time here. It's really good. We have lots of fun. And in the back there, you can see some windows. He said, come and look through these windows here. And you look at the windows and you look at the workyard, which was about the size of 2 football pitches. And it was only used for loading and unloading chemicals, etc. And he started laughing. He said, oh, it's so funny. Thinking, what? And he said, right, Ian, go down to the stores and get me 1 Wellington boot. So I saw, oh, yeah, what do you want, left or right? Oh, I said, done that. Choice is yours. Thinking, oh, this is a bit odd, this guy. So I go down to get a Wellington. He said, right, go put it in the middle at workyard. I put it in the middle at workyard, and he's laughing his head off. And after about 10 minutes, a man comes out of the offices. He's walking across the workyard. He sees the Wellington boot. He takes a 20-yard run up and he boots it to the other end. And he wanders off. This compost says to me, Ian, go get that Wellington boot and go around that builder's yard and get it filled with concrete. So we take it round, fill it with concrete. Next day, we put it in the middle of the workshop. Exactly at the same time, same man comes out, 20-yard run up, except for this time, he nearly breaks his foot. It was the height of sophisticated humour for Compo. It's funny about the first time and it loses its element. So this is the these are the presses on an opening day, and you can see it was incredibly hot and incredibly unpleasant. But it used to make a fortune. And then, of course, what happens as you got into the 80s with the demise of textiles, there were less wool grease, and also there was then the impact of biological powders and other chemicals in. So eventually, it was privatised, Yorkshire Water, and we know what a good job they do. And that's the way it went. But after I'd left, I used to go back and photograph them in the holidays and things. And people were leaving all the time. And I became very interested in the idea of what's called a significant detail, which is a philosophy in photography where you would actually, if you're in an environment, you would look for a detail that would tell you the context. It might give you a bit of back history. It might give you something else. And it was by a photographer called Ben Shaw, an American photographer, who said that sometimes doing that will tell you more about the place than the wide image. And I took this picture. This was the last day at work. And the guy on the early shift, his best mate was on the night shift, so he'd never see him. So he wrote, I'll be seeing you, which I thought was quite interesting, particularly the pin-up, putting her hands across her face. Just to the right of the telephone, it's burnt out on this slide, but it was the list of rules and things for working conditions. And what's quite interesting now, it's been defaced. People put other comments on. And this is me just shortly before I went off to Bradford Art College in, I think she's 1973, 74. And when I was at college, I went in a break. On a break. I'll keep going a little bit more. A bit more. Couple of minutes. Right, I went off to Waltham College about, and whilst I was there, my dad died. And he left me a little bit of money. And I thought, should I buy a car or something like that? I didn't. I bought a 5x4 plate camera. So if you don't know what a 5x4 plate camera is, it's a camera that goes on the tripod. It's got leather bellows. You look through, you put a black hood, black cloth over your head. The picture is on ground glass. It's upside down and back to front. And you focus it, then you close the shutter, and then you load it with a dark side at the back. And I was very interested in using that camera. One, because of the fantastic detail you get, but when you're photographing people, it's a different thing because they become part of what you might say is the performance. Because a lot of people be photographed with 35mm cameras or even 2¼ square, where you do actually put a physical barrier between you and your subject. With a 5x4 plate camera, once you've set it up, you've set the frame, and you've got the people stood where you want them to stand, you then look at them directly eye to eye. You speak to them, and then you can click the shutter when you think it's appropriate. But it's also the way people present themselves to it. There's a formality about it, which I quite like. Anyway, I really liked this pub. Not pub, it's a fish and chip shop. The pub's next. And I'm really interested in it. And I thought, I'll go photograph this. And I went on the bank holiday when it was the Queen's Silver Jubilee, because I knew there wouldn't be much traffic about. And the weather was lovely. So I took this photograph, and I could hear there were some people inside. So I knocked on the door, and Mr. and Mrs. Gray were inside. And I said, I'll take a photograph of your chip shop. Would you like to be in it? And they said, well, we'd love to be in it because we're going to retire in a few weeks, and it'd be a lovely thing to have. So they came out, and I took a picture. I just took 2 plates, that's all I could afford. And then I was chatting to Mr. Gray, and he said, have you looked above the doorway? You might not be able to see it, but directly where he stood, just above the doorway, there's a sign that says A. Gray. And he said that it's made out of cat's eyes from the road. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, well, when we opened this chip shop, he said, I couldn't afford a neon sign. They were expensive. But he said, my best friend is a man called Percy Shaw. So I don't know if you know, Percy Shaw is the man who invented cat's eyes. And Percy said to him, never mind, I'll make you a sign. So he made this sign out of cat's eyes. So when the cars, they've changed the road layout there, but when the cars used to come down, the headlights would go across and it'd twinkle. And he said, that's fantastic. And it's one of them things that I've always done in my photography. I've always engaged with the people I'm photographing with. I've always want to explain what I'm doing, why I want to do it, are they happy to do it? And the thing that you get back from that, you get like this story. If I hadn't taken a picture and gone, I wouldn't have known that story. And I think this story adds so much more to this particular image, you know, and it's just such a really nice thing. And it's like I say, it's what I've done all my career, is really get involved with the people that I photograph. And I'd like to think that as I develop my career, it's become more of a collaboration between who I photograph, rather than me going in and saying, this is how we're going to do it, we're going to do that. I often talk to people for quite a long time and see what's what. And after the tea break, we'll all go to the pub.
Read it so far, and I'm going to ask the question after the month.
You don't have to ask any questions whatsoever, because if you buy a copy of the book, Life, there's the answer to any question you may possibly ever have.
But I always think the fact that, you know, it's not but he stores the other, but it's up to life, I do. Anyone else there, anybody that's what I have to see.
Right, thank you. So, this is the Mulder's Arms. Now, for those of a certain age, you'll remember that when just about every northern city, when they're demolishing the inner city, if you drove round, there'd be these buildings just left on the road, which was inevitably a pub, fish and chip shop, perhaps the bingo hall and the cinema, and a church. And it was just thought quite a mess. And then the Royal Institute of British Architects told me that it was a deluded social plan that some planners had, that was when they were doing the inner cities, they would demolish all the terraced houses, they'd move people out temporarily, and then they would move them back into this new housing, which inevitably never happened. But their idea was that if they left what they identified as the important bits of their social lives and communities, when they came back, the social lives would be picked up. The only thing he didn't realise of that equation, if you knock all the houses down round the pub, there's no customers. So eventually they all go. Well, this is the Mulder's House, which is on Sticker Lane in Bradford, which was my local pub. And I absolutely loved that pub. And people had been moved to the four corners of the Bradford area, but they always used to come back. And it was fantastic because, well, it had a fantastic landlady, but it still had a football team, it had a darts team, it had a dons team. The racing pigeon men met there. The allotment men met there. There was a secret meeting every last Thursday of the month with the Royal Andaluvian Order of Buffaloes. And the Sons of the Desert used to meet every last Friday of the evening and laugh late into the night watching Laura and Hardy. And since I put these pictures in Saltsman, a guy contacted me and said the Bradford Astronomical Society used to meet there and also a motorbiking club. So it was a vibrant pub. And what happened was Kawasaki decided they were going to build a factory in Bradford and they would build it on the site behind this pub as long as the council knocked the pub down, right? So there was a bit of a furore about that because the brewery didn't want to knock the pub down and all the people that used it didn't want it knocked down. But the council, in their wisdom, thought better and said, right, the pub's now condemned. Kawasaki built a factory. It lasted 18 months before they moved to somewhere else where they got tax relief and rates relief and stuff like that. But anyway, because I was a local there, I asked Webster's if I could, could I do a project on it? And they said yes. So what I did was, I went with a 5x4 plate camera and photographed the pub over a period of time from exactly the same angle, the same site. Now, are we going? Moving on. This is Winnie, who was the pub. Fierce matriarch of the community. Absolutely fantastic woman. Ran it with an absolute fist of iron. Well, very fair. Now, this is the last delivery of beer, wines and spirits, which Webster's very kindly donated as a celebration for the pub. And it was for all the locals. Everybody who went there, for a drink. So, Winnie, pride and joy, was this piano, which is a German overstrung grand piano. A Spargel, I think it's Spangle, whatever it is. Right, now then, if you put a pint of beer or a drink on the top of that piano, you were bad. Because it was always polished, always tuned. If you put a cigarette on the top, that was an even longer band. Now, at that time, there was a shortage of pub piano players, and Winnie was desperate to have one in the last months of the pub. So she advertised in the Bradford Telegraph and Argus for piano players to come and do an audition one Friday evening. You had to play 6 tunes, and then us, the regulars, would vote on who got the gig. On the night, 2 men turned up, and they were both blind. One was called Gabriel, who had a card that said, I ain't no angel, but I play the piano like one. And the other one was a character called Freddie Fingers. So anyway, they're invited to play. Freddie Fingers kicks off. Now, it'd be kind to say he had a very percussive style, right? I mean, he was demolishing the piano, and he wasn't going down that well. Anyway, Gabriel, who also happened to be a professional piano tuner, he steps up and he plays. He's a very, very fine piano player. Unfortunately, he had a very weak bladder. So after 3 tunes, he had to go for a pee. So while he's having a pee, Freddie Fingers gets some matchsticks and sticks them between the keys. So when Gabriel comes back and he plays, it's all out of tune, it's all over the place. Gabriel knows what's happened, so he kicks off. And then Gabriel calls Freddie Fingers out for a fight in the car park. So we're all thinking, well, this is a good entertaining evening, isn't it? So we all troop out into the car park to see 2 blind piano players have a fight. So while somebody's trying to work out how we can conduct this fairly, Winnie comes steaming out of the pub. She's like, what on earth's happening here? I said, I'm just going to have a scratch. And she said, nobody's having a fight. I've never had a fight in any of my pubs. You will not have a fight here. So yes, the two piano players, she said, do never, ever step foot in my pub again. And everybody else, she says, right, pour your drinks down, give us the glasses, you're all barred for a week. And I stood there and she said, what do you think you're doing? And I said, well, I'm taking photographs. She said, you're part of the problem. I said, what do you mean? She said, you're egging them on. We all think they're going to be in the paper or on the television or something. She said, give me your camera. I said, well, I need no. She said, give me a camera. So I give her my camera and she says, right, you can have it back when you need it, but you need to go and think about what you were doing. So about 2 days later, I ring her up and said, can I have my camera back? And she said, yeah, have you thought about what you were doing? I said, yeah, well. She said, well, come back. I come back. And she says, well, what have you got to say for yourself? I said, well, no, really. She said, that's the problem, isn't it? She said, you've not thought about that. She said, you're taking pictures there. What are you going to do with them? You're going to exhibit them. You're going to put them in the papers so people can laugh at us. You know, I said, this isn't my community. She said, these people here, they've had a little bit much to drink and it's kicked off. And it's a fraction of a second when it's gone wrong. And you're going to record it for posterity. And that's going to make people stupid. So she said, you need to think about what you're doing if you're going to be a good photographer. And I said, yeah, it's for real, blah, blah, like that. And then she gave me the camera. And I said, what's happened to the film? She said, I've thrown it away. She said, nobody needs to see photographs like that. And I was really upset at the time. But then you get older and you think about it. In many ways, she was right, really, because I was part of that community. And she said to me, you've never seen a fight in this pub, but you're going to take a picture like that and you think it's fantastic. And I often think about how right she was. And eventually, the pub, this is the last Sunday of the pub. We're having a bit of a drink there. The piano was sold to a local coal merchant who came and picked it up while he was on his rounds. And they were loading it on the back. And I turned around and Winnie was in the pub door crying because it was the symbol of her pride, and it was really, quite touching. And then what happened was the council had said, right, you've got to close on this date. And she said, we can get stuffed. She said, I've lived here 40 years. I'm going to close when I want to close. And I'll move out when I'm ready. And we haven't drunk all the beer. We haven't drunk all the wine. So she said, I'm going to stay open. So anyway, the council one Sunday afternoon sent up a gang of men who boarded up all the windows and the front door. So Winnie's still living in there. And they said, we can use the back door. So what happened is, for a week after this, she kept the pub open just for regulars, so she used to go around the back. Until one night, and we're all sitting in, it's all boarded up. She said, this is enough now. We'll have to call it quits. We're going to drink the pub dry. I mean, I remember I left the pub about 4 o'clock in the morning. But we're all in there and we're all having a bit of a knees up. We're having a sing-song and stuff like that. And the toilets were outside. So somebody went out and he said, these two police cars out the front and the shining lights up at the pub because they're wondering where all the noise is coming from. Now, at that time, pubs had to shut at 10:30. And if you were caught, it was problematic because you could get if you were drinking in there, you'd get a caution or whatever it is. So somebody said, switch the lights out. When he said, no, then get stuffed. I'm not bothered. I'm leaving anyway. Anyway, these two big burly coppers come in. What's happening in here then? It's like 1 o'clock at night. You know that it's illegal to be drinking at this time of night. Like, everybody's looking a bit sheepish. So, right, okay, we're going to have names and addresses of everybody. And this voice pipes up and says, excuse me, officer. Just like to inform you that this is a private party. And I don't think that your names are on the guest list. So I think we should invite you to leave. And this bloke says, I recognise that voice. He says, who is it? And this bloke steps forward. And he was a defence barrister from Bradford Town Court. And then they said, oh, you're like that. And then it shows the Times. When he said to him, would you like a drink? And I went, well, yeah, we're off shift in an hour or two. We'll have a pint or two. And then they took the bloody dartboard with them, which I thought were a bit cheeky. So this is us all sat inside, still having a drink while it's all boarded up. And then eventually, that was the end of it. But I really loved that pub. I had some fantastic nights in there. This is the last night, or having a bit of a sing song. A rough pub. I mean, people think it was a rough pub, but it had such a community spirit, and she was such a fantastic lady. So the question, I've done 50 years, and I've won quite a lot of, won a few awards, and I've had a few exhibitions. But where did it all go wrong? The number of times it's gone wrong. And sometimes you can't see when it's going to go wrong. And I've been caught so many times. Now, one of the first things big commissions I did was this, which was from the National Museum of Photography, which we should remember was founded in Bradford. It was the National Museum of Photography, right? And then it got changed to the National Museum of Photography, Film and Television. Absolutely fine, no problem with that. Then after a bit, it became the National Media Museum, and then it's become what is now an outpost of the Science Museum. And then all the rot set in was when, for some reason, and I went to loads of council meetings about this, I sat on a select committee, and it was never transparent why the core photographic collection was moved to the V&A. Other than the fact is that we still live in a London-centric thing. So, and it was such a success that they moved down. And I went to a meeting, this rather pompous guy who said, well, it's very difficult to get to Bradford. Well, it is actually, because it's not on the end of the tube. They don't understand, it's not on the end of the underground. I said, well, actually, if you live here, London's a very difficult place to get to. And he said, no, the other big problem, he says, every time I come here, it's full of Yorkshire school children. Yeah. So I said, surely that's what he wants to be full of. Anyway, it's gone and, well, whatever. Anyway, Colin Ford, who set it up, commissioned me to do, think about this, well, it was the end of the textiles. So I did this exhibition. Anybody know what this guy is? He's a bobbin doffer. He's not a bobbin ligger, he's a bobbin doffer. The interesting thing about industry, every industry, it has its own colloquial language. And it's a great sadness, I think, that some of these terms are being lost. With the demise of industry, you're getting a sort of demise of this very specialised vocabulary, which I used to say, doff means to take off. So he takes the bobbins off when they're full. So he's a bobbin doffer. And the ligger is to lice. They put the bobbins on. So it's the whole vocabulary like that. So I did that. And a lot of the places I went or applied to get to, some of them won't let you in because health and safety, or there's like an independent photographer taking photographs. They want to have control of photography. And sometimes you'd only get access when it had closed. This is Dixon's Bobbin Mills, which was at Staten, and I got there after it had closed. And I was looking for evidence of people who'd worked there. It's the absence of presence. And on the back of this joiner shop door, I found this wonderful little still life of, photographs of, proud workforce. There's a newspaper clipping about somebody who won a competition at the Craven Show, Yorkshire Sporting Heroes. And then there's a cartoon which is about a misdemeanor between a secretary and a director, and they've put names in. So I'm assuming it's probably based on fact. But I like that. It's a bit like visual archaeology. And so it opened at the National Museum of Photography, reasonably well attended, reasonably well received. And then the Sunday Times published this, and the proverbial lit the fan. And particularly the picture of the young boy underneath, he's in a carpet weaving factory, and he was doing that. And the British Wool Board, the International Wool Secretariat, got really, really upset about it. So this guy, Rod Sweeney, accused me of being biased, that I'd gone round and looked for the worst things. I was subversive. I was a communist. It was my, ambition in life to bring down capitalist society, which I thought I'd quite like that on my CV. Ian Beesley brought down capitalist society one afternoon with an exhibition in Bradford. And then the T&A got on board, and I was this. The layers can lie. So they went and photographed all these bills that I couldn't get access to and said, look how wonderful modern and stuff is. And then Ron Sweeney were on BBC television, he were on the radio. I mean, he had a real rant. And I mean, I'm only in my early 20s here, and I was very upset because, it wasn't even on my mind, any of that. I just photographed what I knew. A lot of my relatives had worked in the mill, and I saw it as the last chance to record it before it went. And it got really, really unpleasant. And then Colin Ford rang me up and he said, I know it's upsetting you, Ian. And he said, don't worry about it, because he said, we're going to back you 100%. And he said, think you bear in mind, he said, last weekend, 2 weekends ago, he said you had 500 visitors. The last weekend, you've had over 3,000. Don't worry about it. So I didn't. And then, when the Wool Exchange closed in Bradford, I put a big exhibition in there of all this. And the same man, Mr. Ron Sweeney, wrote an article then, said how I was to be congratulated on what I had the foresight to record it before it all went. You can't win, can you? And then it's one of them things, when you're doing a big project, there's always what I call the triad of power. So there's always three parties that have got vested interests that perhaps want to have the control over the images or the interpretation. So there's me, because I think I know what I want to do and how I'm going to go about it. Then there's the workforce, the community that you're working with. They'll have an idea of how they wish to be represented and how they wish to go forward with it. And then you will have, maybe the directors of the company or the people who've commissioned it, or in most cases, it's the person who's provided the money. They will then have another opinion. And in my experience, it's very unusual if you get all three to agree. There's always some sort of problems. Now, this was Hydro Aluminium, which was a foundry. It used to be Yorkshire Foundries in Leeds. And they were closing. And they approached me if I'd go and document the closure over about 18 months. And I applied to arrange lottery funding, and I got a really substantial grant, which meant I could work there for over a year. I could bring in other practitioners, and we could produce this, really nice book. And I started photographing there, and part of the thing was I involved all the workforce. So I lent them cameras. I brought Ian McMillan in, the poet, to write poems with him. I got a painter to come in. We did painting. We did all sorts of things, because I said they need to have their voice in this, because some of these people have worked there for 3 generations. They've worked there 40, 50 years. They'll know more about this than I ever will. And I felt very strongly that they should have their voice represented. So I was photographing it, and as we produced work, we put it all around the site, the canteen, the clocking in, the foyer, so people could look. And I've been there about a month, and the union rep came to me and he said, Ian, I'm afraid I've called a meeting with the workforce because I've had a lot of complaints about what you're doing. What? Said, people have been complaining. They're not happy. And I thought, I've raised all this money. I've got all these people in. And I was thinking, this is going really well. So we go for a meeting, and I'm stood there. And I said, right, okay, what's the problem then? And this guy said, well, we're not happy. We're not happy with what you're doing. We don't like it. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't like it? And he said, well, I thought you were a proper photographer. I said, well, possibly. He said, oh, it's all this colour rubbish that you're shooting. I said, well, times have moved on a bit. I shoot colour now. And they said, well, it's crap. We don't like it. So I said, well, I am, that's the way it is. I said, I still don't understand why you're upset. And this guy said, I'll tell you, it's simple, Ian. Them black and white pictures that you've taken over the years, when I look at one of them black and white pictures, it looks how it feels to work in heavy industry. And I thought, I can't argue with that. If somebody who's worked in industry for 40 years thinks a black and white photograph is more representative of how it feels to him, I think he's got the right to dictate that representation and not me. So that's what we did. I stopped taking colour pictures and I went back to taking the old black and white ones. And then what happened was the company had put a tiny bit of money in. So I owned 95% of the budget. And anyway, when it came towards it, and I kept saying to the CEO, the MD, said, come and have a look at what we're doing. And he said, oh, no, it's fine. I tried to be brilliant here. No, it's fine, it's fine. Anyway, we got the book done. He said, I need to look at the proofs now. If you bring him up to the boardroom. So I took him to the boardroom and I laid him out this table. And he starts looking at me and he goes, what's this then? I said, well, this is the book. This is what I've been doing for 18 months. They said, oh, no, it isn't. He said, oh, it's in, definitely in that. I said, well, it is. He said, no. We didn't commission you to do that. I said, well, you didn't commission me to do what? He said, we commissioned you. We've given you that money so you can produce a commemorative book about the works. And he said, this is disgraceful. He said, it's subversive. He said, there's language in here that's unacceptable. These photographs of unacceptable practices. There's criticism of the company and the CEO. And he starts to go off on one. And he's going on and on. And I'm looking at him, and it reached the point where I couldn't hear the words, because what I was focusing on was at the side of his head here, he had a big wiggly vein. And as he got more agitated, it was throbbing. And I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, bloody hell, if that bursts, how do I explain that? And anyway, he said he was absolutely livid, and he had me escorted off site. And then I got a letter from him saying that they'd withdrawn their funding, and they'd written to everybody that worked there, and they were going to be made redundant the following week, that this book was not endorsed by the company. It was seen to be subversive, and it was seen to be critical of the company. And they said that if any copies of this were sent to the CEO in Oslo, in Norway, there would be severe repercussions. I don't know who he was thinking of, because he just made all the bloody lot of them redundant. So he didn't any other repercussions. So he wrote this letter, which was a bad mistake, because the following week the CEO got about a dozen copies. Anyway, we launched it, we published it, because I had the money, and we launched it at Leeds Industrial Museum. About a month later, I got a phone call from him saying that this MD in Leeds wanted to meet me for dinner. And I said, I can get stuff. That boat's gone. He said, no, he really wants to speak to me. And I said, well, no, I don't want to deal with him. You can get nothing. So she said, I'll just send you something that you might find of interest. So she sent me a copy of a letter that he'd received from the CEO in Oslo, congratulating him on an innovative project that was an example of good practice for redundancy and the closure of a factory. So bloody hell. And then, we're going wrong way now, aren't we? Shortly after that, I was the artist in residence for Tetley's. Tetley's closed in Leeds, and they asked me if I'd go do a book, and I said, yeah, I would. And they said, we're going to put all the money up. Oh, it could be problematic. Anyway, I started doing it, and they were all right, actually. There was a guy in HR who was a bit arsey. And one of the things that they insisted was they had a week where all the people working there were given redundancy training. A corporate speaking about telling them, we haven't got any job anymore. You might be able to get a job, but possibly you can't. And he said, it's such a wonderful week. At the end of that week, he said, I want you to take a group photograph of all the people there, right? So I said, well, do you think that's a good idea? And he said, oh yeah, they'll love it. And of course, when he speaks to them, they'll say, no, we don't want that. We've had a week of awfulness, and then this guy thinks we're going to take a happy, smiling picture. And it got a bit heated because they're controlling the budget. And he said, well, you'll have to do it, we'll just close you, we'll stop it. So I said to work for us. I said, right, okay, let's humour them. We'll do that, but we'll also take a picture for ourselves. So they said, well, what do you mean like that? And I said, well, I've got this idea. So you know that the Tetley's side is the huntsman, right? So I said, what we'll do is, I think it's about 90 people or whatever it was left there. I had 90 huntsman's masks made. So we took this picture, and then we took the picture where they all held the masks on. Right. And they're all laughing. It was a good laugh. The guy, the head of HR, came out and he was really mad about it. He said, what are you doing here? Well, I said, we're having a bit of a laugh. They said, well, it ain't funny, is it? You're taking the mickey out of Carlsberg and all that. Okay. So we went in the following week, and he said, right, everybody has got to attend a meeting in the canteen per shift, 20 people at a time. We're going to discuss how you should behave, right? And they put, you can't write any graffiti that's critical. Nothing's got removed off-site. And he's there pontificating. He's got a flip chart, and he's writing these points down. And every time he turns round to the flip chart, oh, they're all doing this behind his back. So, and he kept wondering why they were all laughing. And of course, he's just putting them around behind their back. So it's like a really remarkable life sketch. Then when we get to do the book, which was called Tales from the Brewery, I decided that on the inset, which is a beer mat inset, in the original logo, the beer glass is full. So on the original proposal, it was empty. And the guy from HR said, well, that's awfully negative, Ian. Well, it just made them all redundant. I don't think they're finding it that amusing. So he said, no, you can't have it empty. So I said, well, we'll have it half empty. And he said, and this is true, he said, no, you can have it half full. So you can't win, can you? Now, I don't know how many people here watch Aberdeen. Nobody ever admits to bloody watch it. I watch it all the time. I think it's all right. And we're watching it one night, and my partner Angela says, there are your photographs in the Dingle's cottage. Like, they're in the walk back. And we looked at it and we paused it, and there were framed pictures, landscapes of mine, like this. This was one. There's another one. And it's the names written on it and the title. I was thinking, well, where have they come from? So I ring up Yorkshire Telly production office, put my suit when I'm doing. I said, I'm bringing up about all these photographs she's got in the Bingle's cottage and stuff. They're rather good, aren't they? I said, yeah, they are. And I said, I'd just like to know where you're going from. And she said, I'll find out. She rings me back. I said, the art director is a really great friend of the artist. And the artist has given him. So I said, well, who's he then? They said, he's a guy called Mark Long. I said, I've never heard of him. And she said, well, who are you? I said, I'm the guy who took the photographs. So she said, oh, well, it's fine. It's good publicity for you. But how was that working? Anyway, because part of the thing, when I was teaching part-time at university, one of my specialities is intellectual property, copyright. So I said, actually, this is copyright infringement, and I'd like to hear from your legal department. Write me a very fluffy letter. So then through the Artists Union, we respond like that, and it goes backwards and forth until they admit that what happened is this art director had bought a calendar, liked it, chopped it up, put it into frames, and put it onto a set. Right. No payment, nothing. So it's illegal. It's infringement of intellectual property. And they're setting me all that. I had a solicitor this time. The solicitor said, no, I'm going to lay it aside and we'll go to court. And anyway, about a week before, they settled out of court with quite a substantial amount of money. And then, a week later, I got a letter from the producer of Emmerdale saying how disappointed he was in my attitude. And as such, I would never, ever work for Yorkshire Television again. Which was quite good, because I never worked for him in the first place. Now, the other thing that I always wanted to win in my career was Ilford Black and White Printer of the Year. It was the best thing you could win. If you're a black and white printer, it was the absolute accolade, because you got free materials for a year, and you got a massive silver cup. You didn't actually got a little small silver one, but in my imagination, it was massive. Anyway, I tried for years. Every year I sent in and I never got anywhere. And then I took this picture, which is of the graves at Easham Head, Half Moon Bay. It's the earliest site of Christian burial in the Western world, and it's where St. Patrick was supposed to have been shipwrecked on his way to Ireland. And I took the photograph one really cold January when the sun was going down, and I knew that the water would be frozen in there, so you get this luminosity. And it's a really hard print. I printed it, and I sent it in, and I got a phone call saying, congratulations, Mr. Beesley, you've been longlisted. Week later, you're shortlisted. Oh, Jesus. Beside myself with excitement. Another week goes by. You're down to the last two. It's you and Dennis Thorpe of The Guardian. They go, oh, wow, I'm in with a real shout here. So I said, right, okay. What you're going to do now is you've got to send the negative in. We need to see the negative. It's on Ilford. So I go down to my dark room to pull out this 5x4 negative, and it's on Kodak. So I ring him up and I say, I've made a mistake. I always use Ilford. I just happen to have a mix-up here and I've used Kodak. It's all right, you're disqualified. I said, well, no, it's developed in Ilford. It's Ilford paper. I'm always begging on the phone. I love Ilford. And I'd do anything for Ilford. They don't know you're disqualified. So I'm disqualified. Years later, I know Dennis Thorpe quite well. And he said, oh, it's so funny, that story, isn't it, about that negative, Ian? I said, well, I don't think so. He said, well, it is because you'd actually won. So anyway, about a couple of years after that, I'm walking down Deansgate in Manchester, and I walk past HMV, and this picture is the cover of the Black Sabbath's Greatest Hits. It's on their album, it's on the CD. I licensed it to a picture library called Photonica, who licensed it to Black Sabbath. And they used it on the Greatest Hits CD, the cassette, the T-shirts, the tote bags. This image has earned me more money than any other picture I've ever taken in my career. And I'd still rather have the bloody Ilford Award. So that is Black Sabbath. So, how are we doing for time? Okay. So, as I said, I got represented by Photonica, which is a big picture library based in Tokyo, Japan. And they picked me up, and I was one of 300 photographers. And they marketed my work around the world. Fantastic. I used to get really good royalties. Photonica then got bought out by Corbis. So I went from 1 in 300 to 1 in 3,000. And then Corbis got bought by Getty. So all of a sudden, I'm with Getty. It's supposed to be quite prestigious. I'm 1 in tens of thousands. And anyway, they say, oh, we're getting out. They say, you've got to fill these forms in. So they send me these forms. It's about 4 sheets of A4. And it's nothing to do with photography. It was about, how old are you? Are you married? Do you have children? Do you live in a semi-detached, detached, rural, urban? Do you play golf? Do you play snooker? It went on all that. Do you have any pets? So I just ignored it. So anyway, they then said a week later, if you don't fill this form in, we won't represent you. So we'll have to fill it in. So I fill it in, and at that time I had 2 black Labrador dogs. Within 48 hours, I had a 6-page shot list saying, would you take pictures of the black Labradors, sleeping, eating, lying at your feet, all sorts of crap. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. And they said, well, we want you to do that because if you take some good pictures that we might like, we might represent them. And I said, no, you can forget it. I'm not interested. I'm not doing that because it's, you could do a week's work, not get anything back. Anyway, I had published I think it was the Times published a little article about when my daughter was born, which was only quite difficult circumstances. For every year, I photographed her growing up. And at the end of the year, I would print these pictures and I'd bind them into a lovely album and give them to my partner. And I wrote an article about important family photographs were and stuff like that. So Getty had seen these and they said, we'd really like to license some of these pictures of your daughter. And I thought, I'm a little bit, what we're going to do. So I spoke to Angela and Faye and said, they're going to license it. We might earn a few £1,000s out of it, maybe a bit more. And they said, well, it'll be fine. I said, well, we'll put that money aside for Faye when she goes to university. So anyway, we licensed them about 20 pictures. This picture, they sold over 200 times worldwide. So quite a decent amount of money. And they sent me a breakdown of where it had been used and what it had been used for. And this was sold as an illustration of paedophile stalking. I didn't say that one coming. And once I got over it, you can see it's quite clever because you can't identify anybody off that picture, but you can identify it's a small child possibly on her own, on a swing in a park with a sinister somebody photographing her or whatever. And I thought, oh, Jesus. And that's the problem. Once you put things out on the internet or you license them to a big picture, you lose all control over them. I terminated my contract with Getty a few years after that. Now, one of the other things is years ago, I got invited to exhibit at the London Art Fair, which is a big prestigious art fair. And it's mainly for contemporary artists like Grayson Perry, Anthony Gormley, people like David Ock. It's a big selling show. But in the middle of it, they do a little photography show curated by a guest director. This guy was the director of the White Cube Gallery in Kensington, who'd seen some of my work on Eschel. And he rang me up and said, I'd like you to exhibit some of this work, and I'd like to write all the stories. So I did that, and this is when it was closing. And I was looking for somebody to photograph, and a lot of them had left. And I wandered back to the railway tavern, and I saw Bob Rowe. And I thought he was having a snooze. So I went out and took the picture, and as I took his photograph, he lifted his head up and he was crying. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. And he said, no, it's fine. It's done, man. So I said, what's the matter, Bob? And he said, I've just received my redundancy notice. He said, I've been here 40-odd years. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, if I was a horse, you'd shoot me. And he was absolutely bereft. And I said, Bob, I'll never exhibit this picture. I just think it's, I didn't realise it was so private. And he said to me, Ian, he said, no. He said, we're really proud of what you've achieved since you've left here. And we really like what you've been doing. And he said, I think it's probably important that people see pictures like this because then they understand what employment means to people who work in manual labour, they work on the sewage works all their life. But it's an important part of my life and it's gone. So that was the story. And it was picked up by The Guardian for my greatest picture, which you see, it's a full page. They have the photograph, then they have the story, and then they have a little picture of the photographer. So anyway, they published it. My mate Ian Macmillan rings me up and he said, have you got The Guardian? I said, no, not yet. He said, that thing's in. I said, yeah. I said, what do you think? He said, I think you better go have a look. So I go buy the paper. You will notice that is not me. Well, that is Ian Beesley. That is Ian Beesley, who'd just been sent to life imprisonment in South Africa for murder, drug running and extortion. So I thought, well, that's a bit odd, isn't it? So I ring up The Guardian and say, what's happening here? And they said, well, the picture desk was run by an intern. And he got a phone call saying, indent picture of Ian Beesley. Bottom left, he had two Ian Beesleys. So it was Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. He's Mo and I'm Eeny. Now, my daughter had just started at York St. John University and she rang me up and said, oh, Dad, I've got that Guardian article. She said, it's fantastic. She said, I've been showing all my friends and lecturers and they're all really impressed. So, well, what about a picture of me at the bottom then? She said, oh, that's the best because everybody thinks you look dead hard. So I don't know if I do. Right, we're getting somewhere near the end now. So then one of the last projects I did was at Otter Compass Steelworks, which was the last stainless steel rolling plant in Britain, which was like a lot of the companies that I photographed in the last 10, 15 years. The reason why they've closed is not because they weren't making money, it's because of globalization. They're actually bought by investment banks or they're bought by overseas companies because they buy the order book. And a lot of them, what they do then is move production to the second or third world because they can produce the goods at a third, a quarter of the price and still sell them at the same amount of money. So that's Otter Compass Steelworks, bought the steelworks and moved production to Croatia and somewhere. Anyway, they commissioned me to actually photograph this. And I said, well, you know, this is how much the technically book cost, this is how much the other book cost. And they said, well, money's no object. She said, well, you know, how much you want to do it? And I said, well, it's not a matter of that. I said, it's a matter of editorial control. If I'm going to do this, we have to have an editorial board because I've had a few problems. So I said, any decision where there's anything contentious, we have to have a meeting. So we set an editorial board up, which was me, the managing director, the head of HR, the union rep, trade union representative. And then I said, we need somebody who's autonomous. So we got the local vicar who knew the steelworks and everything. So I'm photographing there, and it was a very brutal closure. As stuff was being produced or finished, they would sack or make redundant. But all the time, people were going and leaving and things like that. Now, what they produced, got it wrong way now, wasn't I? What they produced was this is a steel core which weighs 5 tons, and it has to go on a wooden cradle. And a man came to see me, and he was in a wheelchair, and he'd been crushed between two of these because they hadn't put it on a wooden cradle. And a forklift truck at the end of the line, and the road, and this as he was going through. So it impaired mobility, impaired vision, and stuff like that. But the company valued his experience, so he still worked there. And he said to me, he said, I've worked here virtually all my life. My dad worked here, my uncles work here, my cousins work here, my sons work here. It's been the most important thing in my life, and I have to be involved in this project. So I said, well, okay, what do you understand about what I proposed and what's been discussed? And he said, well, I only know what Popeye told me. So I said, well, who's Popeye? He said, well, he works with Rotherham Bob. Well, I said, I don't know who Rotherham Bob is. He said, you know, he's the best mate of the dancing blancmange. So I said, right, okay. There's a lot of people got nicknames. He said, no, everybody here has a nickname. Everybody. So I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you go away and get me a list of nicknames and we'll see what we can do with them. So he goes away, comes back about a week later, and he's got sheets of A3 paper. He's got about 20 sheets, and it's got the name of the person, and it's got the nickname next to it. And I've laid them out on the floor in this office. And the MD comes past now. The MD was a very tall, thin, gaunt man, and his assistant was a very small, rotund man. And I'm laughing, and he said, what's so funny? I said, I've got a list here of nicknames of everybody who works here. And he goes, well, he won't have Ian because people like me and my colleague here in management, we don't believe in such things like nicknames. It's only for those that work on the shop floor, those that work with the hounds. So I said, oh, right, okay. Anyway, he's looking at it, and his face is, he goes, right, who's written this? This is absolutely disgraceful. So I look down, and he's the acid bath murderer. Now, his little mate is turning purple in the face, trying not to laugh. Tears are coming down, and he looks, and he goes, you're right, it's absolutely awful. What are we going to do about it? So I look down, and he's the Oompa Loompa. So, big row. So he said, we can't use it, blah, blah, blah. So we get the vicar in, we have a meeting, and the vicar had a very good sense of humor. He's finding it quite funny. And he said, well, I can see both points of view. He said, I can see that, if you don't know you've got a nickname and you've got one, you might not be right happy. But it's a very important part of culture here. And he said, some of them are very inventive, they're very funny. So he said, I think what you ought to do is just take off. Oh, hang on, skip to it. We'll just take off all the real names. And he said, just alter the ones that are a bit politically incorrect. So that's what he did. And some of them are fantastic. The one that I like, there was a character, very, very keen amateur photographer, who was always bringing these slides in to show people. And he was known as Slideshow Bob. So anyway, I get this list, and what I do is I actually I sent it to my mate Ian Macmillan, and I said, "Do you think there's something you can do with this?" So overnight, he wrote a poem, which he then sent back to me, and we sent it out by email to everybody who worked there. And within about 2 minutes, I got emails back saying, they've read this poem, it's made me cry, it's made me laugh, it's made me sad, but it's made me so proud. So, a song of goodbye. Farewell, hand on bollocks, farewell, Basil Brush, farewell, seaside drunk and sea cow, you're silent and weeping beneath history's crush, your name's your memorial now. See you, German helmet, so long tanked up Ted, goodbye, sausage stuffer and God. Your names resonate through the roads of my head, the names of the daft and the odd, the funny and the friendly, the helpful and the kind, the sarky and the smelly, the fat and half blind, the ones you'd laugh with, the ones you'd laugh at, the ones you go miles to avoid, the ones you buy drinks for, the ones who drink pop, and the ones who just get you annoyed. Just the names shouting up from the void. So goodbye, milk bottle, Pol Pot and cod eyes, goodbye, dog on head and dog feet. Hang on to the memories that will never die of a comradeship forged in the heat. Thank you very much.
I think a little if they do. Does anybody, anyone got any positive feedback? Yeah.
All right. Magnetic North. Oh, that's very kind. Just to tell you that work, Magnetic North, will be on display at Saltsville next year. Yeah.
Well, so what's
that Saltsville? Go to exhibition at Saltsville. Probably going to produce another book with that, but that'll be the smaller, sort of more cheaper. I won't be going with these publishers. I'm doing that. So that's next year. I am the artist in residence for Born in Bradford, which is at the Bradford Institute of Health Research, which is the world's largest longitudinal birth cohort genetic research program. So I'm working on that. Part of the thing of that is that I photograph all the twins that were born in the cohort, which was 13,000. I'm in the 15th year of that, and I'm photographing them every year growing up, and I will go till 18 or 21, depending on whether I'm still standing. So I still do that, and I'm the artist in residence for, it's called Enliven, which is a big project by the University of Exeter about the representation of dementia. So I'm working on that. So that's enough. And then I will try and retire. I've heard, yeah, I heard it's very good. Very good, but I don't think I'm any good at that one.
yes. Yeah. Very well. What allowance should the rates for the laws of God like?
Well, the hardest one I did was an orphanage in Belarus. I went to Zetskivitsny orphanage, which I went to, and I went with it was a firm of plumbers, and it was the 50th anniversary of the company, and rather than having a big bash, they decided to go something really good. And this orphanage, which is very near Chernobyl, a lot of the children in there were dying of radiation poisoning. They got no parents, and they got no facilities. There were no sort of facilities or anything. So we went with the plumbers and rebuilt this orphanage. And I photographed all these kids, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking. And yeah, so that was the worst one. As you can see, it's still quite upsetting that what happened, and when you were leaving, and you left these kids behind, in the fact that you know that, Jesus Christ. And we did produce a little book of that, which was called Orphans of the Fallout. And that work will be exhibited at Salts Mill as well next year. And the book was such a success that I've received what's the word I'm looking for here? I am not allowed to go to Belarus. I can't get a visa to revisit or go back because the government didn't like what we'd written about. Because all the fallout from Chernobyl went into the food chain. So and as you eat it, it's a cumulative. So the more food that you eat from container, the worse it gets. So it was just awful. And the problem is it's because I get so involved with the project, and it's something like that where, you just adrift with it really, and they're all about the same age as my daughter, so that really ripped me out, that one. So yeah, there you go. There's an emotional answer for you. Yeah, well, it could ask me what was the best projects I've ever done. Bloody hell, they said something cheery. Oh, the best project I ever did was when I was artist in resident at Tetley's, because I'd been there a week, and they said, they asked me to take a palate test to see if I could be a beer tester, and I thought, yeah, I'm having it now. So you do a test, and I mean, it won't surprise you that I've got a very sophisticated palate. So every Friday you had to go to the brew house, and you had to taste the beer. But the worst thing, you had to spit it out into a bucket. But then you had to write a thing about what it was like. But once a month, if you were a beer tester, you went on what was called cask patrol, which was fantastic. The chief brewer would pick 6 beer testers. A town would be nominated. The company would give you a big float of cash, and you would go drinking all day. So you go into Tetley's pub, and you would drink it, and then you discuss it, and then the brewer would go talk to the landlord and tell them, So the one that went on, it's the only one I went on because of various reasons. The place we went was Otley. So we started at midday. By the time we got 4 o'clock in after, and bear in mind, most of the guys I'm going with are about 20 stone, 6 foot. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I didn't know where I was. So they put me on a train. I woke up in Liverpool. So, and then, one of the things, my devotion to the cause was such that I put 2 stone on in weight, and I got gout. Yeah, so there we go. So thank you very much. Next year, the second edition of this book comes out. We shall be softback. We are going to publish another little book, which I think we're going to do with Salts Mill, which will be on the exhibition that will be in Salts, which is called Life Goes On. It will include a lot of projects that I've not published before, going back into my archive, and there's going to be some new work in it as well. And it'll be on for all of the summer, I think. And we'll probably be doing some walking tours. So there we go.